Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
On the morning of October 14th, 2003, 23-year-old Felipe Santos was heading to work at a concrete and masonry company in North Naples, Florida. He was riding with two of his brothers when his white Ford Tempo collided with another car on Immokalee Road. It was a minor fender bender and no one was hurt, and what happened next would depend on who you ask. But after that morning, Felipe was never seen again. 3 months later, on January 12, 2004, 27-year-old Terrance Williams kissed his mother goodbye, handed her some gas money, and said, "I'll see you later, Mama." He drove his white Cadillac toward North Naples, where he was pulled over by a police officer. Terrance was also never seen again. These two men didn't know each other, they never met, but their disappearances have been entwined for over 2 decades, and many people believe that they went missing because they both encountered the same man. When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell you the stories of those who never came home. Today, I want to tell the story of Felipe Santos and Terrance Williams. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again.
Welcome back.
I'm Kona.
And I'm Ethan.
And we're the husband and wife team behind this podcast. Each week, I tell you the story of an unsolved missing persons case. Ethan doesn't know anything about the case going into the episode and is here to provide his reactions and questions in real time, hopefully asking some of the same ones you have at home. Now, this story is one that I've kind of been aware of for a while, but I hadn't gotten too deep into it. I knew it was insane, but digging into this episode made me remember that no matter how bad I think something looks on the surface, it is usually worse.
Okay.
Yeah, it's insane. These cases illustrate so many failures within the system, but also within the media. As you could probably guess from the intro, there's a clear suspect.
Mm-hmm.
But these cases are obviously unsolved, which is why we're covering them. So despite the shocking circumstances of these two men's disappearances, there's a complete lack of media coverage. At least there was at the time. They barely made the local papers and didn't really, truly break through nationally for over a decade.
I wonder why.
Well, one is Mexican, one is black, and they're both men, and they're both adults.
Okay.
So generally, that's why. Before we get into it, though, we've had a bunch of people join us over on Patreon, so we'd like to take a moment to give some of them a shout out. Thank you to Heather W., Jessica M., Vicky L., Trisha S., Megan M., Sue, and Allison L. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you all so much.
As a reminder, if you'd like to get our episodes ad-free and early, I've been doing really well with getting them out like a day early, you can join us over on Patreon at any level, starting at just $2 a month. You'll also get a free copy of the ebook that I wrote. Now let's get into the stories of Felipe Santos and Terrance Williams. Felipe Santos was born on May 26, 1980 in Oaxaca, Mexico. Everyone who knew him describes him as quiet, polite, just a nice, hardworking guy. Felipe came to the United States at 19, settling in Immokalee, Florida, which is about 40 miles northeast of Naples. Immokalee is an agricultural town with a predominantly Latino community of migrant workers who work in the tomato fields there. Felipe, however, found work at a concrete and masonry company in North Naples. Two of Felipe's brothers had also migrated to Florida, so he had a built-in community here, which is good because, like I said, he was only 19 when he came over. By all accounts, Felipe was building something for himself while he supported his family. Not only was he sending money home to his parents in Oaxaca, but he also had a common-law wife, and together they had a baby girl who was just 3 months old when he disappeared. Felipe was young. He was only 23 years old in 2003, but he was in Florida for a reason, and he was working every day to provide a better life for his family. A friend of his told CNN that Felipe was low-key, and you would generally find him either at work or the laundromat. His brother Salvador later wrote on an FBI questionnaire, quote, his dreams were to get ahead, to have a home where he lived with his family, end quote. Felipe Santos wasn't out in Florida committing crimes. He was a hard-working family man. However, he was also an undocumented immigrant. And for Felipe, like all undocumented immigrants, that status hung over his head. Even though he was keeping his head down and working, he knew that there was always a chance he could draw the attention of the wrong person and be separated from those he loved. On the morning of October 14th, 2003, Felipe probably thought that his worst fear was coming true. But what he didn't know was that the reality was probably worse than anything he could have imagined. On that day, Felipe was driving to work with two of his brothers when his white 1988 Ford Tempo collided with a Mazda Protege on Immokalee Road in North Naples. Because Felipe was undocumented, he didn't have a license or insurance. Concerned about the possible repercussions of all this, because again, he was also with his two brothers who were also undocumented. Felipe pulled into a gas station and attempted to talk to the other driver, a woman named Camille Latch. Felipe and his brothers begged her not to call the police. They told her that they'd pay cash to have her car fixed. And again, this was just a little fender bender. There wasn't much damage. But it was too late. Camille had already called the police. Collier County Sheriff's Corporal Stephen Calkins arrived at the scene at 6:55 a.m. He quickly determined that the crash had been Felipe's fault, though, according to CNN, witnesses differed as to who they believed had actually been at fault. Calkins also quickly found that Felipe didn't have a driver's license or insurance. Latch later told investigators that Calkins seemed frustrated. She said he was, quote, a little, end quote, upset and raised his voice slightly, telling her he was, quote, tired of this type of situation, someone getting in an accident and not having insurance or a license, end quote.
Okay. So he's already showing bias?
Yeah. Even though there are plenty of things in the world that, in my opinion, are worse than someone not having a license or insurance, like not excusing that. Obviously, you should all be driving legally.
Yeah.
But this thing in particular really seemed to bother Steve Calkins. CNN did an excellent in-depth article in 2023 on Felipe Santos and Terrance Williams cases. And that's honestly, that article is what I based a lot of this episode on. It's just so good. And they got all of the files and everything.
An article that was written 20 years after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to point that out.
Nope. Yep.
Okay.
And that is a very astute observation. So in that article, though, Charles Peterson, who's another deputy who knew Calkins and went through the academy with him, also talked about Calkins' feelings on this issue, saying that what made Calkins really angry, quote, was these Mexicans or blacks that were uninsured or driving with no license, end quote.
Wow.
Yeah. But then he backed off that statement a little bit, saying that it wasn't particularly black or Mexican drivers who angered Calkins, but, quote, anybody that had no driver's license or no insurance pissed him off, end quote.
Okay, but then why did he specifically say blacks and Mexicans?
I mean, yeah.
Because...
Well, and it's so funny. Like, there's actually more to what he said to CNN that I didn't include. But basically, he wasn't asked a question, and he was just on the phone or whatever with a reporter. And he's like, do I think Steve Calkins hates blacks and Mexicans? Sure. And then he went into that quote. Jesus. And then he's like walking it back. And the reporter's like, I didn't ask a question, but all right. Like, it's wild.
All right, so the cop is known to be racist.
Yeah, allegedly.
Well,
so whether Felipe actually caused the crash that morning or not, Calkins just got there and decided it was his fault.
Well, not that I'm defending him.
Yeah.
But if you rear end somebody,
I don't know that it was a rear end. Though.
Oh, okay.
That was never specified.
Okay, all right.
So they just said it was like a fender bender. It was a little crash. It was a collision. I never had it described that way, so I don't know.
Okay. All right. Never mind.
Yeah. But, okay, so we don't know for sure whether or not the crash was his fault, but he was obviously guilty of driving without a license, driving without insurance.
Sure.
So it wasn't surprising when Calkins put Felipe Santos in the back of his patrol car and drove away. Felipe's brothers watched him go, assuming that he was being taken to the county jail. Now, remember, these guys were all on their way to work, and they knew that there wasn't anything they could do at that moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he had to be processed. He has to go through the whole thing.
Right.
So they're like, okay, well, we'll go to work, and then
We'll get him
after work.
afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which makes total sense. Later, though, when they contacted the jail, Felipe wasn't there. They went to the police station, but no one there could help them either. They searched hospitals, but no Felipe. Now, at that point, their fear was that he had been turned over to immigration.
When you say they went to the police station and there was no help in locating him, or no help in, like, we don't even have a record of his arrest?
We don't even have a record of his arrest. Like, that name means nothing to us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Now they're thinking, crap, he got picked up by immigration. Like, the cop turned him over, you know, whatever.
There should still have been a record of his arrest. When you put somebody in cuffs and put them in the back of your car, you have to radio it in.
Yeah.
Like, that's just...
And to be fair, I never saw specifically whether or not he was put in cuffs, just that he was put in the back of the car.
Okay, well, you shouldn't be put in the back of the car without cuffs on.
Also true. I'm just saying.
Or without being searched.
And I don't know if he was searched or not. That was never specified. I'm just saying all we know is that he was put in the back of the car.
Okay.
But yes, your feeling that this is weird is correct.
Well, I mean, clearly it is. I mean, obviously, I get it from the intro, but like, wow.
Yeah, and it gets even weirder. So there's no record of Felipe Santos anywhere in the system, like not with immigration either. That got rolled out, right? So this guy is just like gone, not in hospitals, not in jails, not at the police station, nothing. But that's because, according to Calkins, he didn't take Felipe to jail. He said that he wanted to help him out and had decided to issue citations instead of booking him, which, okay, that's great. But instead of just leaving Felipe there with his brothers, so basically they had called, or I think it was their foreman, to come pick them up and take them to work.
Okay.
So Felipe could have just like waited there with his citations,
right,
gotten a ride to work, and been fine. But Calkins later said, well, sometimes if you do that, they'll just drive off in the car. And he's like, I wanted to make sure that he didn't drive off because he doesn't have a license or insurance.
Then wait.
Well, instead of waiting, Calkins put Felipe into the back of his car and then drove him to a Circle K convenience store on Immokalee Road and Winterview Drive a few blocks away.
Why would he do that? What does he say is his justification for taking him a few blocks away?
He said he gave Felipe his tickets there, handed back his car keys, and told him not to drive until he had a valid license. And then he left.
Complete and utter bullshit. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like, if your justification for doing that is you don't want him to drive off, you handed him back the keys and it's only a few blocks away.
Yeah, he could have just walked back to the car.
Walked back to the car. Exactly. Like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm really curious as to how this is going to progress into basically a serial killer racist cop.
Well, so yes, obviously you're picking up that there are a lot of problems with this so far. A bigger problem is there's no evidence that Felipe Santos ever arrived at that Circle K. According to Kevin O'Neill, a sheriff's detective who investigated both his and Terrance Williams' disappearance, there was nothing to corroborate that either man ever made it to any Circle K. And Felipe Santos has never been heard from or seen again.
Yeah, where's the copy of the citation that he wrote? Because it's not just a piece of paper you hand over to somebody. There's carbon copies that need to be filed. Otherwise, if you're just handing somebody a random piece of paper that says you owe this amount of money or whatever, like, they don't have to fucking pay it. There's forms, that need to be filed so that can be enforced.
Yeah, those citations were never located.
Well, of course not, because it's bullshit, because he never wrote them.
Yeah. CNN was able to find, because, they're all sequentially numbered.
Right.
They were able to find, the one before that was written, the number before was written, 5 days prior. There was one after that was written a couple days later, and there is one in the middle missing, but it's just missing. And it's only one, and he said multiple citations.
Right.
So, no idea. They were never found.
More holes in this story.
Yeah. Felipe's brother Jorge filed a formal complaint with the sheriff's office on October 29th, 2003, 2 weeks after his brother vanished. But there was no major investigation, and not only no national headlines, but no local headlines either. I couldn't find a single mention of Felipe in any of the local papers until 8 months later in July 2004. And by then, he wasn't the only man who had mysteriously gone missing in Naples. It's spring, which is the perfect time to do a little closet reset, and that is why we're using Quince. My problem is I've got a bunch of random clothes of varying degrees of quality. Ethan's problem is he has clothes that are from the early 2000s. I have no idea what's even in your closet half the time.
Definitely have 20-plus-year-old clothes in there.
Right. So we are both using Quince to focus more on quality over quantity. Quince makes beautiful everyday pieces using premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and super soft denim with styles starting around $50. And you just made an order.
Yeah, so I just ordered a pair of chinos and a pair of golf shorts. If they're half as comfortable as the sweater that I had bought from Quince, they're going to be great additions to my wardrobe.
Refresh your spring wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/ATTWG for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. Go to QUINCE.com/ATTWG for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ATTWG.
Hey everyone, I'm back to talk about Mood. They're the company that ships federally legal THC products right to your door. Listen, you can find gummies to just get you high pretty much anywhere these days, but Mood offers functional gummies that combine premium federally legal THC with targeted botanicals to help you get into the perfect mood in as little as 15 minutes. Mood.com has an incredible line of cannabis gummies, and you can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with promo code ATTWG. Listen, I've talked many times about my inability to sleep, but Mood's Sleepy Time gummies have completely revolutionized my nights. So head to Mood.com, find the functional gummy that matches exactly what you're looking for, and let Mood help you discover your perfect mood. And don't forget to use promo code ATTWG when you check out to save 20% on your first order. Try it today at Mood.com.
I have a hard enough time figuring out what I'm going to eat for lunch every day, and I work from home, but you have to leave the house at an ungodly hour of the morning and actually pack your lunch. So Factor has been a game changer for you.
It's saved me a ton of time not having to meal prep. I don't get bored with the meals because, if you meal prep, you're eating the same thing for lunch every day. The meals get delivered right to my door. They're absolutely delicious. It's something that I don't have to worry about anymore. My meals are covered for the week.
Every meal is crafted with functional ingredients, so lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, healthy fats, like everything that you would want in a meal. And it's also fresh, never frozen, with over 100 rotating weekly meals, so there's always something new to look forward to.
These are not your typical TV dinners.
Head to factormeals.com/ATTWG50 off and use code ATTWG50 off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscriptions only while supplies last until September 27, 2026. See website for more details. Terrance Williams was born on January 17, 1976 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. In January 2004, he was 27 years old and had recently moved to Naples, Florida to be closer to his mother, Marcia. Terrance is Marcia's only child, and she was only 17 when he was born, so the pair was very close. As Marcia said on the Tyler Perry show Never Seen Again, she and Terrance basically grew up together. According to CNN, Terrance was working 2 jobs and liked reading about Socrates. He was a nice guy who everybody liked, but he also had his share of struggles. Like his mother, he also became a parent as a teenager, and by 2004, he had 4 children that he was struggling to help support. His driver's license had been revoked, his car had expired plates, and there was a warrant out for him in Tennessee related to unpaid child support. But according to his mother, he was working 2 jobs and trying to get the money together that he needed to kind of take care of all of that. On the morning of January 12th, 2004, Terrance was on his way to work. He was driving his white 1991 Cadillac when he saw flashing lights in his rearview mirror. He pulled over at Naples Memorial Gardens Cemetery and parked in a parking spot. Cemetery employees later gave sworn statements saying that they watched Corporal Stephen Calkins pull Terrance over. They saw Calkins pat him down and put him in the back of his patrol car. Before he drove Terrance away, Calkins asked the cemetery employees if he could leave the Cadillac in the parking lot. Then, at 12:49 p.m., Calkins returned to the cemetery alone and placed a call to dispatch. His call was answered by Corporal Dave Jollicoeur, who was working the dispatch desk to make extra money. The call was recorded, so we know exactly what was said. Calkins asked Jollicoeur to run a VIN for him. Then the pair put on a really stupid black sense, and Calkins said, quote, "I got a homie Cadillac on the side of the road here. Signal 11, signal 52, nobody around," end quote. And then the whole homie thing continued between both men throughout the call, which is just like gross and very unprofessional.
And it's recorded.
Yeah. And they both know it's recorded, obviously. They're not dumb. But here's where it gets weird, though. So, put all that aside. Signal 11 means that the car is abandoned. And signal 52 means that the vehicle is disabled. Neither of which was true.
Yeah, it's abandoned because he took the driver away.
Yeah. After some more back and forth, Calkins said that he's going to have the car towed. But then he says something even stranger. And this is still on that recorded line. He says, quote, "Maybe he's out there in the cemetery. He'll come back and his car will be gone," end quote.
I mean, what the hell does that mean? Obviously it's not true.
Yeah.
So if his car was disabled, why would you even be expecting him to come out of the cemetery?
No, I mean,
to a disabled car. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's right. It's so you're right. Disabled is weird because it's okay, his car broke down, but he's well, I'm already here. I might as well go visit someone in the cemetery.
Yeah. And then saunter back and it's oh, now my car's gone.
What a day.
Yeah. That whole thing obviously is designed to throw everybody off.
Right.
But
you're right. That part, because that's what I was focusing in on, right? The fact that he said those 2 things, knowing that they weren't true. It didn't even occur to me that doesn't even make sense just as a general story on its face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after he told dispatch this weird false story, he hung up, called the tow truck, took the keys to the Cadillac, which he had the keys to the Cadillac, and moved it from the parking space where it was to the side of the road. And I've heard this described a few different ways. One was just that he moved it to the side of the road. I think it was Marcia who said that it was moved in a way that it was then blocking traffic, which it hadn't been. So I don't know exactly where it was, but the point is he moved it and then he tossed the keys in the dirt next to the car and left.
Wow. I mean, so moved it in a way to block traffic, probably to increase the urgency to get it towed.
Yeah. And to justify, I guess, why he did all of this, right? It's a vehicle blocking traffic. Of course, had to get it out of there immediately.
And who did you say saw him move the car?
The cemetery workers, several.
So he did it just out in plain view.
Yeah, this is 12:50 p.m. or something. 12:49 p.m. is when he made the call to dispatch. So this is the middle of the day.
This is wild.
Yeah. And it gets even crazier. According to witnesses, when Calkins returned to the cemetery to call the tow truck, he was alone, which would make sense if he had arrested Terrance. Calkins could have taken him to the jail, gotten him processed, and then returned to deal with the car. All of that.
Sure.
Except for if you didn't know about the dispatch call, right?
Right.
But those movements would make sense. But as you probably guessed, Calkins didn't arrest Terrance that day. According to his own police report, Terrance wasn't under arrest when Calkins put him in the back of the police car. He was never taking him to the jail. Instead, he said that Terrance was worried about being late for work. So before he put him in the police car, Terrance had asked Calkins to give him a ride. Calkins then said in the report that Terrance, quote, asked me again for a ride so that he would not lose his job and that it was just up to the Circle K at Wiggins Pass Road, end quote.
So this guy just has a habit of dropping people off at Circle K's around Florida.
Apparently. So Calkins says that he drove Terrance to the Circle K, which is a different Circle K than the one he says he drove Felipe to. He dropped Terrance off, never saw him again. Now, of course, there are many things wrong with this story. One is, according to his mother, Terrance never would have asked a cop for a ride because he can't stand them. But more importantly, Terrance didn't work at the Circle K.
There we go. I knew it.
He worked at Pizza Hut, which was over 2 miles away from Circle K. So there was no earthly reason he would have wanted Calkins to drop him off there. Because, again, you could see, okay, you're distrustful of cops. You don't really want him to know where you work. So, you have him drop you off at another business a couple blocks away, not 2 miles away.
He could have just said that Terrance wanted to use the payphone up the street at Circle K.
Yeah.
Why pigeonhole it into,
that's where he worked.
That's where he worked.
When that's so easily disprovable.
Right. I mean, not that I want to give this guy any more, smarter stories to make up, but,
right.
This is mind-blowing because there's so much documented evidence that he's lying about all of these things, and nothing has been done?
Nothing has been done. And we are going to backtrack a little bit and get back into the quote-unquote investigation into Felipe's disappearance.
Okay.
And I say quote-unquote because obviously there was not much of one.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that it's 3 months later and he's using the exact same story, not even taking him to I don't know, a Dollar General or something, a Circle K, really? So this is what happened next, according to Calkins. Quote, I told him he had better make plans right away to get his car, and he said he would take care of it, and he thanked me. I asked him for his name, and he said Terrance. I also warned him that his tag was expired, but he said the receipt and proper registration were in the glove box if I wanted to check it out, end quote. So yeah, Terrance did not have a license on him because remember I did say that it had been revoked, so he didn't have any
right.
form of ID on him, right?
Sure.
So that's why Calkins had to ask him his name. He said Terrance. Again, this is all according to Calkins. He left Terrance at the Circle K and drove back to the cemetery to get the registration from the glove compartment. But when he got there, he said that the paperwork wasn't there. Quote, I now phoned the Circle K and asked for Terrance, and the clerk that answered the phone said she did not know any Terrance. I now felt that Terrance had deceived me. I now called for a wrecker, thinking that the Cadillac was now abandoned and maybe even stolen. After Coastland Towing removed the car, I went back to the Circle K and the surrounding area to search for Terrance, but I could not locate him. End quote.
Okay. So much to unpack there. Okay, the immediate thing is you thought that the vehicle might be stolen. You're a fucking cop. You can find out whether the car was stolen or not. That's what you run the VIN or plate for.
Right.
So you already would have known if the car was stolen or not.
Yeah.
And don't give me that, oh, well, it might not have been reported. Well, if it wasn't reported, then it wasn't fucking stolen. At least not up to that point.
Yeah.
So this is bullshit. Again, further bullshit. Nobody's going to hand a cop the keys to their car and say, go in my glove box to find the paperwork.
Especially not a guy who already does not trust or like police officers.
Right. And none of this explains why he moved the car and threw the keys in the dirt.
Right. Well, so he did, because he was asked about that part, the throwing the keys in the dirt part. And he's like, I don't know. I guess I was frustrated once I realized that he had been lying to me.
Okay. So your little vigilante justice is throwing his keys away?
Yeah, I don't know.
There might have been a house key on there. Probably was. This is 2003, right? So, or 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So, smart locks, that kind of thing, like with,
Weren't very popular.
They weren't very
so it's probably
popular,
just
and-
a key.
yeah, and what the fuck? This is so wild.
Yeah. No, I mean, just like how brazen the
Yeah.
whole thing is.
Yeah, exactly.
So then at 1:12 p.m., so about like 20 minutes or so after he made that first call to dispatch, Calkins called dispatch again and asked for a warrant check on Terrance D. Williams, date of birth April 1st, 1975.
How do you get that information?
Yeah, good question, because this is after Calkins said that he couldn't find Terrance. But now he suddenly had his full name and birth date.
Right.
And again, there was no documentation in the car that had that information. There was no license or identification on Terrance's person that had that information. So the only way he could have gotten Terrance D. Williams, which is the correct initial, and the birthday would have been from Terrance himself.
Are we sure that he didn't? So just because his driver's license was revoked doesn't mean he couldn't still have it on him.
Well, a couple things. So one, witnesses at the cemetery said that during the initial stop, they saw Terrance like repeatedly patting his pockets and putting his hands up being like, I don't have it, buddy. Like,
Sure.
But more importantly, the date of birth that Calkins gave in that second call to dispatch was April 1st, 1975. And if you were listening closely, when we first started talking about Terrance, that's not the birth date that I gave. That's not his birthday. According to his mother, that's a birth date that he would sometimes give cops when he was in a jam.
Got it.
So there's no documentation anywhere that has that date. Nobody else could have given that to him. That had to have come directly from Terrance. And, it could have been that when he initially pulled Terrance over, Terrance gave him that birth date then at the cemetery, and he didn't mention it on the first dispatch call.
Well, yeah.
And then suddenly mentioned it on the second one.
That was going to be my next.
Yeah.
If Terrance isn't in your presence, why are you running a warrant check on him now?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's also a good question. What's the point?
Yeah. So you find out.
You don't know where he is.
Exactly. You find
like, oh
out
no, he's a murderer.
Yeah.
Oops.
Whoops. Well, let one slip.
Yeah. So this is also when we need to talk a little bit more about the timeline, because I've given you a few specific times in relation to the calls that Calkins made to dispatch, and they were in the early afternoon. And that makes sense, given that Calkins reported that the initial stop happened at 12:15 p.m. So again, that first call was at like 12:49, right? So that makes sense. He takes Terrance to the Circle K. They have a little conversation. He comes back, blah, 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 right?
Sure.
All fits. Problem is, the cemetery workers said something completely different. According to all of the witnesses, the initial stop took place between 9 and 10 a.m., which makes sense because Terrance had to be to work at Pizza Hut at 10. And he was on his way to work. He wouldn't have been on the road at 12:15. He would have been over 2 hours into his shift at 12:15.
Right.
And every single witness said that it was between 9 and 10.
Which provides 2+ hours of unaccounted for time.
Correct. So what was he doing during that 2 hours? Now, Calkins didn't really have a good answer for that. According to him, he made a traffic stop at 9:50 a.m., weirdly, at the same intersection where Felipe Santos had crashed months before. Then he says he issued another citation at 1:54 p.m. The problem is there's no actual proof that either of those stops ever happened, meaning that the majority of Calkins' day is officially unaccounted for. And Terrance Williams has never been seen again. After a few days, Marcia Williams filed a missing persons report. Not trusting the police, though, she went into detective mode herself. She ended up finding Terrance's car after just calling around to different tow companies and found out where it had been towed from. She then later contacted the cemetery workers who had witnessed the traffic stop and had them sign statements about what they had seen.
Wow.
She did this.
Nice.
Marcia then called the police station to ask about the stop in an effort to find out what had happened to her son afterwards. One of the times she called, because she apparently called many, many times and just got the runaround because there was no record of Terrance Williams at all.
Mm-hmm.
She spoke with Kathy Marchi, who looked up the towing records and found that Calkins was the one who called it in. On January 16th, 2004, 4 days after Terrance was last seen at the cemetery, she called Calkins up. And here's a recording of that phone call.
Yeah. I hate to bother you home on your day off, but this woman's been bothering us all day. You towed a car from Vanderbilt to 111th Monday, a Cadillac. Do you remember it? No.
So 4 days after this, Calkins says that he has no memory of making this stop.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I didn't want to play more of it just because it's kind of hard to understand, but I do have a transcript of the rest of that call. Kathy says, "Do you remember? She said it was near the cemetery." Calkins, "Cemetery." Kathy, "Anyway, the people at the cemetery are telling her you put somebody in the back of your vehicle and arrested him, and I don't show you arresting anybody."
Mm-hmm.
Calkins, "I never arrested nobody." Kathy, "That's what I thought. Okay." Calkins, "I got to think about this one for a while." Kathy, "But you're sure no one was in that vehicle?" Calkins, "No." Kathy, "It was around 12:30 in the afternoon?" Calkins, he laughs and says, "Jesus, I can't remember." And then Kathy says, "You're getting to be my age, huh?" and laughs. Stephen Calkins says, "Damn." Kathy laughs. Calkins, "What do they want?" Kathy, "Well, there's somebody at the cemetery who's telling the mother that you picked up the driver and he's been missing since Monday." Calkins, "Oh, for Pete's sake." Kathy, "And I said he didn't arrest anybody." Calkins, "No." Kathy, "But she keeps calling and saying, well, there's got to be some way you can get a hold of him. I think she spoke to every dispatcher in here today." Calkins, sighs. Kathy, "Anyway, I was trying to figure out what color the Cadillac was. I forgot. I got it right in front of me. You picked it up at 12:27 on Vanderbilt and 111th, and Coastland came and got it, a large white Cadillac." Calkins, "Large white Cadillac. I got to look it up in my notes. I don't remember. God almighty." Kathy, "But you're sure you didn't? You're sure there was no one with it?" Calkins, "No."
Which completely contradicts the statement that he gave later.
Yeah, so I'm guessing he just hadn't, this is 4 days later, he must not have written his official report yet.
I guess,
right? Because, like, how do you do all that, write this whole story about the Circle K in an official report and then say you don't remember? I don't know.
I don't know.
Right?
Either. I mean, it also, like, that just doesn't make
None
any
of it
sense.
makes any fucking sense.
Like, I get it. Like, cops do a lot,
Yeah.
in their day-to-day activity. But, like, you not remembering taking somebody to the Circle K to go to their job and then going back to the car to find the registration, getting pissed off and throwing the keys in the dirt.
Right.
Like, you're not going to remember any of that?
Like, that's not an everyday,
exactly,
every hour occurrence.
Right. It's not like somebody was asking you,
"Hey, remember that one speeder?"
Yeah, exactly. That one citation you wrote 4 days ago that, was completely nondescript, nothing out of the ordinary happened. Like, that I could believe. Like, I don't really remember the details of it. I'd have to look at my notes. But like this, you've already given a statement as to something odd that is not of the ordinary traffic stop. So don't tell me that 4 days later you have no recollection of it and you have to look through your notes.
Yeah.
Because that's complete
But you're
bullshit.
sure that there was nobody in the car.
Right. But you're sure there was nobody in the car.
Like, okay. What I find so interesting is that he seemingly, in any of these cases, didn't even like really bother to come up with a good story.
Well, because he was on the spot. He wasn't expecting to get that phone call.
Yeah.
So he just claimed ignorance.
Yeah. After the missing persons report was made, investigators went through Calkins' phone records and pulled surveillance footage from the Circle K. There was no call to that Circle K in Calkins' phone records. There is no sign of Terrance or Calkins on any Circle K surveillance footage, and no one who worked at the store could place either of them there.
All right. So at this point, he is actually under investigation, and somebody is doing something.
Yes, kind of. A little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
At the very least, they're looking into it.
They're looking into it.
Okay.
But why was Terrance pulled over in the first place? According to Calkinson's own report, quote, the vehicle appeared to be having problems. The driver said he just bought the car and it was not running right, end quote. He then found that Terrance didn't have a license. The problem is, according to Marcia, the car was running fine. She picked it up from the tow yard and drove it right home.
This dude is dumb as fuck.
Yeah.
There is a built-in excuse for pulling him over. The tags are dead.
Right.
Just say that.
Yeah.
I was following behind him and I noticed the tags were dead. I pulled him over. Boom. That's a legitimate reason for pulling somebody over that is provable. Why would you come up with this fucking bullshit story about like, oh, the car wasn't running right?
Right. And he repeated it twice because that's what he said in his initial dispatch call as well.
How?
That it was disabled.
How is this guy not in jail? How have they not dug further into this? This is crazy to me.
They did eventually dig further into it. But yeah. So when investigators compiled a list of the inconsistencies in Calkins's account of the Williams disappearance, they counted nearly 24 untruthful, misleading, or contradictory statements. He ended up taking 3 polygraphs. One was inconclusive, one showed no deception, and one showed deception. And there was still no sign of Terrance. As for Felipe, at first, no one even connected the 2 cases. It wasn't until 2 months after Terrance went missing that the 2 men were linked. Marcia Williams wrote a letter to the editor of the Naples Daily News begging anyone with information about Terrance to come forward, saying, quote, please help me find my son, Terrance Williams, end quote. Her letter ran on page D17.
Pretty deep.
It may have been buried deep in the paper, but it made it into the right hands. The Mexican consulate in Miami read it and called Marcia. When the phone rang, she immediately thought they had found her son, telling reporters, quote, I'm like, oh my God, they found my baby, end quote. But that wasn't the call. The consulate was reaching out to tell her about another missing man, a young man named Felipe Santos, who had vanished under almost identical circumstances 3 months before Terrance. So now they have finally figured out that Steve Calkins was the last person to see these 2 missing men, and they know that his story about Terrance Williams is full of plot holes. Now, again, I'm not going to say that nothing was done or that it was completely brushed under the rug, but an internal affairs investigation that was initiated after Felipe's brother filed a formal complaint against Calkins went nowhere. And that was before Terrance even vanished. Captain Jim Williams reviewed the internal affairs investigation of Calkins and wrote, quote, I can find no basis for linking Corporal Calkins with the alleged disappearance of Santos. I believe that Calkins's actions in this situation were reasonable, lawful, and proper, end quote. And he later told CNN, he's like, I don't know, at the time I figured Santos just took off.
Okay. I mean, okay.
So that's what's crazy. There was an internal investigation, and yeah, okay, fine. They found that Calkins didn't do anything wrong, but that's still a thing that happened.
And it's in his record.
And yet, when Terrance goes missing,
right,
a month or 2 after that internal investigation,
they don't bother to look at the previous internal investigation.
Nobody raised a single alarm.
Okay.
It wasn't until like 3 months after that when Marcia heard from the Mexican consulate, because again, there's no way for Marcia to know about Felipe Santos because none of it had been in the news.
Right. Yeah, and the investigation is internal. It's not going to, make any public record.
Exactly. So she had to find out from the Mexican consulate. Later, in July 2004, Calkins was placed on administrative duty, but then Sheriff Don Hunter told reporters that had nothing to do with the fact that Calkins picked up 2 men after a traffic stop who were then never seen again. It was for unrelated medical reasons.
Okay.
He also told the news press that there was some evidence that Santos had headed to Mexico.
What evidence?
No idea.
Just that he was a Mexican national?
Yeah, basically. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he went home.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe he
what
fled.
the fuck?
Yeah. But just a month later, in August, Sheriff Hunter fired Calkins. In his termination notice, Hunter wrote, quote, "I have lost trust in Calkins and his ability to describe incidents in detail and to recall them," end quote. But Calkins was never criminally charged with anything.
So they think if they just fire him, like, that problem goes away, no big deal.
Yeah, they're like, well, I mean, I guess if he is like kidnapping these men on the job, if we take the job away, then we're good.
Wow.
All right, so let's talk about who Stephen Calkins even is.
Yeah.
Here's what we know about Steve Calkins. He grew up on a farm in Illinois and worked there after high school before taking a job as a security guard at a nuclear power plant. He moved to Florida in 1987 and joined the Collier County Sheriff's Office when he was in his early 30s. His first assignment was patrolling Immokalee, the farm worker community where Felipe Santos lived. Lucas Benitez, a co-founder of the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, described the relationship between law enforcement and residents as deeply strained, saying that officers were, quote, basically planted there, end quote, with no understanding of the community's culture. Calkins was, by many accounts, a capable officer in his early years. Charles Peterson, the former colleague who talked about how Calkins hated when people didn't have driver's licenses or insurance, told CNN about a time the two of them approached a mobile home where a man came out swinging a machete. Instead of shooting him, which according to Peterson would have been legally justified, Calkins chose to disarm him without using deadly force. And that anecdote fits with how others have spoken about Calkins. He was not known for being reactionary or violent. He wasn't out there roughing people up or getting into physical altercations. He was not, for years, like he was not the type of cop you would think would be linked to two unsolved missing persons cases. But as CNN discovered as they dug into all of Calkins' files, Deputy Calkins also wasn't one to make arrests or do much of anything at all. So this is why I was like, I kind of laughed to myself when you're like, well, you know, cops do a lot. And so like, it's easy to forget things or, you know, whatever it was you said, because Calkins did not, in fact, do a lot. CNN found that in August 2001, Calkins made what turned out to be his last arrest.
2001.
Yes.
Wow.
From that point on, he wrote approximately 400 incident reports without taking a single person to jail. Now, what's crazier is his supervisors never flagged this. In June 2003, just months before Felipe Santos vanished, a supervisor gave Calkins a positive performance review, specifically noting that he met the standard for, quote, apprehending and booking suspects, end quote. And this was almost 2 years after he had stopped doing exactly that.
That's like a cookie cutter performance review.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
But like the fact that you can't even go through the guy's record to like see,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
When CNN later asked former Sheriff Don Hunter about the 3-year arrest gap, his response was, quote, I don't have an explanation for you. I'm surprised. Yes. End quote. And it's so interesting, not just because he apparently got away with it, but because both Felipe Santos and Terrance Williams were people Calkins had valid reasons to arrest.
Mm-hmm.
He had the legal grounds to book them both. Instead, he put them in the back of his patrol car and claimed that he drove them to convenience stores. Now, investigators did apparently take the case seriously once the connection was made between these two men. They did a full forensic inspection of Calkins' patrol car, paying particular attention to the trunk. Luminol and other residue analyses were used to check for blood and DNA, but they found nothing. They also placed a GPS tracking device on Calkins's personal car after he was fired. That also yielded nothing.
It might have yielded something if they knew where he had taken the bodies.
Yeah.
Like without that information, it's just him. The information would just be him driving around to different spots. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
for the GPS, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to yield you anything. Like what were they expecting?
That he would revisit the scene or whatever?
Yeah, revisit the scene or like go to their houses or something.
I
Like,
don't know.
He could have been driving to where he murdered them or buried their body repeatedly. But if you don't have information as to that being the spot, it's not like they could do anything. Instead, it's just a bunch of plot points on a GPS map.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that they didn't find blood or anything in the car, one, it's months later, but two, I mean, they didn't die in the car.
Yeah, exactly.
He probably was smart enough not to put a dead body in the trunk.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
The FBI served Calkins with a target letter and asked him to answer questions before a federal grand jury about both disappearances. Calkins declined. And nothing could be done because they just didn't have any probable cause to compel him to do anything or arrest him. A multi-agency task force that included the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigated the disappearances as potential hate crimes because they needed a reason to get the federal agencies involved, right?
Sure.
And so the hate crime statute, they're talking about the federal hate crime statute, which is why they kind of narrowed in on that. Doug Malloy, who was an assistant U.S. attorney in 2004 and led that task force, told CNN, quote, "It is my belief that they were killed because of their color," end quote. But belief isn't evidence. Does it make sense given what we know? Yeah.
Right.
But there are no bodies, no crime scene, and no hard evidence that a crime actually occurred.
While that is true, there is clear evidence that he was lying about everything.
Oh, 100%.
And there's huge gaps in the timeline.
Huge gaps.
So
hours and hours and hours.
I understand criminally.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything, but it's a lot of circumstantial evidence that leads up to one conclusion.
Yeah. And it's not that they disappeared.
Right.
But that's the crux of what we've heard over the past 20 years, that we don't know if a crime even occurred. These men could have chosen to disappear. About 6 months after Terrance disappeared, Sheriff Don Hunter circulated a position statement suggesting that both men had reasons to avoid law enforcement. After all, Felipe was undocumented and Terrance had a child support warrant out of Tennessee. Because of that, quote, "These men may therefore be purposely avoiding being found by law enforcement," end quote.
These guys were on their way to work.
Yeah.
And
they had families.
Like, they were on their way to work and they got stopped by a cop.
Yeah.
And then disappeared. It's like that. Yes, absolutely. They have reason to avoid law enforcement. That doesn't mean they have reasons to abandon their families.
Exactly.
Those are two very different things.
Very, very, very different things.
And if you're going to say that they disappeared on their own to avoid cops and I guess abandon their families, it was randomly instigated by the same officer.
By the same officer, right?
Basically conducting the same traffic stop. Like,
and they're like, and then both these guys are like, oh shit. I mean,
shit, I gotta flee.
Like, it's not like they were being accused of murder. It's not like they were facing like life in prison or the death penalty.
Licenses.
You know, like they both could have overcome that obstacle.
Yeah.
Like even if Felipe had been deported, like
still could have overcome the.
He could have figured it out. His wife actually left Florida and went back to Mexico shortly after all this happened. So like if he had been deported, he could have been like, hey, I'm back in Mexico. Come back here. Like, let's start over. Let's try something else. Let's do whatever.
Right.
You know?
And also, back in 2003, 2004, ICE wasn't running around nabbing people like they are now.
Right.
The deportation process back then was way more cumbersome. And in reality, most local agencies, when they ran across undocumented workers, were not arresting them for being undocumented.
Yeah.
They were ignoring them because, who cares? Because, the process to deport them was so heavy, and as it should be, most local police were just like, I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah. And Calkins didn't even want to make a regular arrest. You think he's going to do all that?
Exactly.
Like, come on. So yes, these were not people who would get pulled over and then decide to disappear from their lives forever. Now, what I find fascinating is that despite the fact that this story is absolutely insane, it remained almost entirely local for years. But Marcia didn't give up. She kept filing complaints and she kept attending meetings with investigators. She kept calling reporters, but for a long time, very few people listened. It wasn't until 2018 that the case got significant national attention, and it happened to be because of an unexpected ally, Tyler Perry. Perry had heard about the case and reached out to civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who's the same attorney who would later represent the families of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Crump filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Calkins in 2018 on behalf of Marcia Williams. At the press conference announcing the suit, Crump said, quote, "This lawsuit is going to formally say what people have been informally saying, and that is that he intentionally murdered Terrance Williams and Felipe Santos," end quote. Tyler Perry also announced a reward for any information leading to an arrest or the location of either man. It was initially $100,000, but he later raised it to $200,000. Standing with Marcia at the press conference, he said, quote, "When somebody goes missing and they are a blue-eyed blonde woman, it's all over the news. This woman has been struggling privately for many, many years just to get attention," end quote. So really, this episode of ours has everything that all of our one-star reviewers loves. Shitting on cops.
Yeah.
And bringing up racial disparities in how missing people are treated. So,
well, enjoy, listeners.
In December 2020, Calkins was compelled by the civil lawsuit to sit for a 4.5-hour deposition. Excerpts were later aired in the first 2 episodes of Tyler Perry's docuseries Never Seen Again. Calkins was evasive. He said that he couldn't remember large portions of his interactions with either man, but at one point, he explained not taking Terrance Williams to jail by saying that the young man, quote, "seemed like a really nice guy," end quote. He also kept talking about how clean Terrance was, which even Tyler Perry clocked as extremely weird. So, like, Tyler Perry did talking head interviews during these episodes, and he's just like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Yeah, does this guy, I mean, that's a clear indication of racism.
Like, it's just being...
Does he think that black people are all dirty?
Yeah. And so he's like, well, this one was real clean.
That's
like,
what he's insinuating? Like,
it was
what
so
the fuck?
gross. So gross. Now, this show, this series, Never Seen Again, is on Paramount Plus. I highly, highly recommend that you check it out. The whole series is actually really good. And he does do underreported cases.
See, I can't watch that because then that would compromise my position on this show.
No, but you can, because the episode 3 is Kelly Brannon, who we also covered on this show. So we've already done that episode,
okay,
so you can watch it.
So I can watch that.
But no, but they have a lot of footage from the deposition on those 2 episodes about these cases. And they have like the recorded phone calls that Calkins made. So it's a really, really good series.
Also, Tyler Perry, if you're listening, like, boost our podcast.
Unfortunately, the civil lawsuit ultimately did not succeed. A court-appointed arbitrator ruled against it, citing a lack of evidence. When Crump's attorneys then missed a filing deadline to take the case to trial, a judge dismissed it. Crump's team subsequently worked to use the deposition to push the Federal Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division to reopen the investigation, though the outcome of that remains unclear. As of this recording, the Collier County Sheriff's Office still officially lists both men as missing and endangered and states that multiple agencies remain partners in the ongoing investigations. Calkins is now believed to be living in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Through his attorney, he has declined all interview requests and maintained his innocence. He has never been arrested or charged with anything in relation to the disappearances of Felipe Santos and Terrance Williams. So what happened to them? I don't think there are really a lot of competing theories here. There's one obvious suspect.
Yep.
He's still out there, maybe in Iowa. The leading theory, held by investigators, family members, and the former federal prosecutors who looked at the evidence, is that Steve Calkins killed both men. The prevailing belief among those who've studied this case most closely is that the deaths were not premeditated, and that what happened was more likely an explosive act of racial violence on two separate mornings. Charles Peterson, Calkins' former colleague and friend, told CNN, quote, "Do I think they're alive? No, I think they're dead. And do I think Steve might have been involved in it? Good possibility. Could he be a hidden monster inside? Yeah, he could be. I tell you, if Steve was capable and did do it, he would definitely make sure that the body would never be found." End quote.
Why would he say that?
Why would this guy say, this is the guy I've been quoting throughout this whole thing. He was just like out of pocket, just saying some stuff to CNN.
So before you go any further, I would take it even a step further.
Yeah.
Clearly, these two incidents were not premeditated.
Right. He hadn't been like stalking them or, yeah.
But in order to do this and get away with it so cleanly in a short window of time, I think he's got or had a place to do it already staged.
Yeah, that could be very true. People also think that he might not have acted alone.
That's a good possibility too.
Because if you look at the timeline of the Terrance Williams case, with Calkins coming alone to the cemetery, then later calling in with Terrance's full name and fake birthday, that have led some investigators to believe that Calkins made contact with Terrance a second time. But was that happenstance? Was he being held somewhere, to your theory?
Yeah.
Or was there someone else involved who was with Terrance when Calkins went back to the cemetery? Or a combination of those two, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Like maybe he did have a place and a guy.
Yeah.
Now, there's also been the theory floated, they bring this up in the Tyler Perry show, that Calkins maybe didn't directly murder these men, but instead perhaps like drove them to the middle of the Everglades, kicked them out of the car, and said good luck.
Interesting theory.
You know, ton of alligators.
Sure.
Tons of everything else in the middle of nowhere on foot.
Yeah.
A lot of things could have happened.
Sure.
No body, no crime is a myth. There have been plenty of successful murder prosecutions that have happened without a body, and we've covered several of them on the show. But typically, with the ones that are successful, there's some degree of forensic evidence or a previous pattern of abuse or something tangible for the prosecution to hang its hat on. But the sad truth is we have a lot of lies, but we just don't have anything like that here. There's just enough confusion to muddy the waters, and a case just hasn't been able to be made. So what we're left with now, over 20 years later, are lies, inconsistencies, and two families who have never stopped asking where their sons are. And a lot of that comes back to who they were: an undocumented Mexican immigrant and a black man from the South with a warrant. The sheriff's office used those facts as reasons to suggest they might have run away. What those facts actually reveal is how little the system valued their lives in the first place. Marcia Williams has kept a lock of her son's hair as a reminder of her only baby and the fight she will never give up on. And in Oaxaca, Mexico, the friends and family of Felipe Santos are still waiting for the chance to lay him to rest properly. His friend Francisca Cortez told CNN, quote, "He didn't deserve to be disappeared in this way. It isn't right that he hasn't been found after so many years, and we don't know what happened to him. As his parents say, if we find his remains, we can give him a Christian burial so we have somewhere to cry and pray for him. But in this case, there isn't anywhere, and there isn't any way to do that. Everything is in limbo." End quote. These men didn't run away. Their lives were ended after they were put into the back of a police car. They didn't deserve what happened to them, and their families deserve justice. Felipe Santos has been missing from Naples, Florida since October 14th, 2003. He is a Hispanic male with black hair and brown eyes. At the time of his disappearance, he was approximately 5'7" and 150 pounds. Felipe was 23 years old when he went missing. He would be 45 today. Terrance Williams has been missing from Naples, Florida since January 12, 2004. He is a black male with brown hair and brown eyes. He has several tattoos, a T above his left chest, ET on his right shoulder, and Terrance in red with blue highlights on his left forearm. He had a gold crown with the letter T on his upper right tooth, with his other upper front tooth solid gold. He also has a vertical scar on his right shoulder and a dark birthmark on the right side of his abdomen. At the time of his disappearance, he was approximately 5'8" and 160 pounds. He was last seen wearing a short-sleeved shirt, blue jeans, and brown Timberland boots, and was wearing diamond earrings and a silver-banded watch. Terrance was 27 when he went missing. He would be 50 today. If you have any information about the disappearances of Felipe Santos or Terrance Williams, please contact the Collier County Sheriff's Office tip line at 1-800-584-0158. You can see all the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheywere.gone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, And Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram and TikTok. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick. All research, writing, and editing is done by me, Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!